This is my first event I've done in literally like 2, 3, maybe 4 years. So like I'm here with the mega pint of rosé, so I don't have to get up for refills. I've done no research going into this. I do hope that some of you guys have questions because I can answer them, or we could just talk about random shit for like, I don't know, for the whole panel. What do you guys want to talk about?
Yeah. Anna, do you want to do an intro? And then I have some questions, and then I know Kat has some questions, and then we can freestyle.
This is my housekeeping intro before we started recording, and I'm completely satisfied with the outcome. Everybody understands that there are hand-raising features, and you can also just jump in. I think Caroline is pretty cool with any interjection that might come.
I mean, I literally didn't even know these features existed, but like I'm really this is like I haven't checked my email since like 2016, so I don't know why you guys are surprised that I don't know how to use Zoom. Like I just feel like this is very on brand of me that I'm like hand raising features, cool. Yeah.
Right. Well, all right. Well, I have a couple of questions to get us started. So I loved Scammer. I loved it deeply. There was laughing. There were like a little bit of public tears. I related to it intensely, both, as I said to you before other people jumped on the call, as someone who has experienced some of those worlds, Exeter, like the American at Oxbridge, but I think more particularly as someone who, like, I wrote an intellectual history of self-creation in part because I want to live my life as art, and this vexes me. And the question of what the hell does that mean is something that I find myself wrestling with in fiction and in nonfiction. And your book, what I loved about it most is I think that there's a certain kind of quote unquote authenticity that I've seen in other fiction that I'm kind of allergic to, where it's a vision, a certain kind of storytelling that is awkwardly self-presentational. And yet, ironically, given what you're writing about, given the title of your book, what comes through most is the love that you have for the vision of life as art, of creating a life that is a story. And like, what does that mean? And I think it is honest and fantastic. So that is my spiel. But I want to start with a quote from your book, which I have written down.
Maybe live events more often if people are going to quote the book at me. That's so nice.
Yeah, I mean, anytime. So you start, it's in chapter 7. You say, if you build a life around an identity that springs from your own imagination, is it your one wild and precious imagination? That was a typo. Your own imagination, is it ever inauthentic? And I'm kind of curious to start there. Does what we want make us who we are? Are our desires the most fundamental part of ourselves? Are they part of that truth? I mean, where do you see the relationship between desire and authenticity?
I think what my view on this may not be what other people agree with, but I will tell you the honest answer of how I think about this. I personally think that our desires and who we want to be are essential to the core sense of self. But I phrased that in the book as a question instead of saying, I think this, because I actually think that it's such a radical viewpoint that people would be less open to this concept if I like printed it straight out. Like, I think it's better to give them an open-ended question and for them to enter it through that. But that's how I feel. But I don't think everyone feels that. I think, there are lots of people who think that like who you want to be or aspire to be, or your dreams of who you are somehow severed from the authentic self. And I just don't agree with them. I said what I said. I believe that, and I would have written it in the book if I thought more people believed it as well. But I made it a question because I just thought it would be more palatable for the reader that way, for the average reader.
It's funny because I think it's more and more. I mean, so my argument in Self-Made is that I think that this is increasingly common, or like increasingly a function of modern life, that implicitly, maybe not always explicitly, we do think of our desires, our like inmost sense, as authoritative. And that I think that like this is like what it means to be a modern person, to be particularly someone in the age of the internet, where like literally our desires in the attention economy shape like what we see. The landscape in which we spend so much of our time online is like runs on the desire engine. So too, money, capital, you can make all kinds of examples there. And yet I think what's interesting about your work, and I think that is precisely that, why I think you are so zeitgeisty, and why I think this work is zeitgeisty in the best way, is because it takes that like implicit, do we think that, and it actually gives that a voice and says, this is what it looks like to understand oneself as downstream of one's own desires. And yet I think there's a tension in your book too, because so much, particularly in the early chapters, when you talk about the life that you want or the life that you love or what you're drawn to or being drawn to beauty, there is like something there that maybe is not relativist, say, or is not just about desire. And I guess I'm curious, for you, life as art, what does that mean? What do you want when you want that?
First of all, so many things. Zeitgeisty, need to note that down. Excellent adjective. Also, love talking about being downstream from one's desires. Also, so poetic, so wonderful. What is relativism? Like, what
Sure.
relativist? I honestly don't know.
Okay,
But,
so like shorthand here, like reality being what you make it, what you want is true, but also
is a relativist or
is there
not a relativist?
that would be okay, but I'm asking you, like, what, when you want life as art, when you are hungering for that, do you have a vision of what that life looks like? What are the, like, tell us about the life you have in your head, or the life you want, or wanted, if that's changed.
Yeah, something that I think that's really interesting about my younger self is that I always thought that if I went to these beautiful places, that happiness would follow. And it's actually so incredible how little I ever questioned that like fundamental thinking. Like, if I can get into Cambridge, get into Exeter, if I can get into downtown New York, like as long as I can do these things, like the happiness will be there. Like I always envisioned a backdrop and never a plot. And I think that's actually both really shockingly stupid of me and also like therapeutically very healthy. Like it's never like, oh, I wanted to like marry this person and we would have this relationship and then we'd do this. Like it was never an interpersonal sort of fantasy that I latched onto. It was always very much a set design fantasy that I latched onto. And the plot was stupidly and healthily very open once I got there. Like I think had I planned better, there would have been a more specific plot. But for me, like that fantasy life always just looked like breaking into these worlds that I was never born into. Also, I have some questions for Catherine D. Catherine, what books have you written? Tell me about how you're friends with Tara, not Tara. And I'm so sorry. One of my good friends from the UK, she pronounces her name Tara. So apologies in advance.
Oh, I don't care. I'd go back.
No. I'm glad Tara. How do you know Tara? How did you get involved with this?
Okay, so I'm an internet culture reporter. I related to I related to your book so much because I am a Floridian NYU grad who abuses Adderall, or used to abuse Adderall like it was nobody's business. I'm just being open about it.
Like that's over. I'm out of that era.
Wait, I studied writing at NYU, and I had like an unhealthy friendship with a girl I met there who like was just a total like leech on me, and I like reading.
Manifest your way into this group chat, like how? Like,
it was so cathartic for me because my Natalie is this girl named Francesca, and I was like, this is my life. It's like so crazy.
Welcome.
Wait, and this is the kicker. This is the kicker. I almost went to Exeter, and I chose not to go.
But that's crazy. We're in Florida.
Boca Raton.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's south of it's way south. But anyway, so that didn't answer your question at all. But I just was like, it's crazy how
I did, and I love that so much. Like I actually that answered a better question than I asked.
Yeah, so I just I manifested my way into the group, and here I am. And it's so funny because Tara is someone who I really looked up to, and then I just randomly met her through a publishing thing. I haven't published a book yet, but I'm working on it, and so it's very I don't know, very magical salon music.
So what's the book you're working on? Also, I love your nails.
Oh, thank you. The chrome doesn't stay as well as I hoped, but
they look great. It doesn't matter. They don't need to stay. They look so pretty. They're doing their job.
Thanks. So I'm working on something about internet culture. I'm going to leave it very, very vague because I've been told not to show all of my cards. So Tara knows the deets, but she and one other friend and the editor might be the only people who know right now.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And so you guys met through a publishing thing, and now
we're pals. And and I met Anna through it's funny. I like created this persona default friend because I like looked at this guy in a park and I was like, I'm in love with him, and he loved Anna, so I followed her on Twitter because I wanted to like ingratiate myself to this stranger I saw basically on the street. So that's my
stranger on the street was
this guy. Wait, who is this guy?
I'll tell you later. Yeah, that's how I discovered like Visa and Mason and all those people.
Crazy how many people Interintellect hooks up. Like when I try to hook people up, it never works. But there are numerous married couples, and even there's kinder intellect because there are like babies born in Interintellect where the parents meet here for the first time. So there's just something about this.
Like babies whose parents met in this online salon.
Yeah. And they just had a baby. It's very common. So, watch out, guys, here in the room.
For a second, I thought you were saying a literal German word, Kinder Intellect. And I was like, that sounds very intense. So, but also, sorry that my mom is just coming and going like a ghost in the background of this, but we're having a mother-daughter day and we're baking quiches. And then when this is over, we're going to eat the quiches is sort of the vibe. So, sorry. Cool. If you're thinking that my apartment is haunted, it is. It's a ghost, but that's so cool. And I cannot believe that you brought such a critical element of Parisian salons to this digital salon that you were like, actually, it was a love interest. I'll tell you about it later. The public. I saw someone. I was in love with him. He was in love with you. Classic love triangle. We can't tell everyone, but I'll tell you about it later. So thank you for bringing that dimension of true Parisian intrigue to this.
Yeah, just
Anna, which I'm realizing your name's not Anna now, it's Anna. I'm seeing all these names, Tara, Anna, which I need to not pronounce the way my friends who have the same name spelled the exact same way I pronounce. Thank God you're here, Catherine, because I gotta say. Is it normal to want to talk to the other people in the chat? Like, can we have questions from them? Is that
guys, turn on your videos unless you're like doing something mega private, in which case we're not interested. We would love to see you. We would love to hear from you. And if you have questions or you just want to introduce yourself, share your Twitter or Instagram handles in the chat. What brought you here? We would love to know who you are and involve
so fun. I love that. Genuinely. How do you do it though? Like, I don't know. Like,
I'll start. Hi, I'm Anna. My Twitter.
Yeah, I'm sure people have questions. How about we do like two from the audience, and then Tara's questions are really good, so we could toggle back to
crazy. I am gonna tell you guys something right now. Before this event, Tara sent me maybe 2 paragraphs, like chunky texts of questions. And I'm gonna be so fucking for real with you. I opened them and I was like, I'm gonna read these before I do the event. Not now, I'm busy, but before the event, I'm gonna read them. Never got to them, but I could tell that she put so much thought into them. So we do need to make significant time for these questions because they were so thoughtful, and my brain doesn't work like that. Like, I would never in a million years text someone before an event. I'm like, just glad I showed up to this event with my like mega pint of rosé. Like, I did this event because I wanted so badly to meet you, and I want to hear the questions because they'll actually be like, I'll be hearing them for the first time along with everyone else. I'm so curious to know what they are. Like,
they're
I'm
really good and fun.
So why don't we, while we're waiting for the audience questions to go in, I'm going to ask you one more question now. While we're chatting, the audience, y'all can submit some questions.
Do they type them? Or?
They'll put it in the chat. They'll put it in the chat and we can select from among them. So if you're listening, put in the question in the chat. But meanwhile, I want to talk to you about friendship. Okay. So a funny story about this. I too have had a couple of toxic female friendships of the variety that perhaps we've all had. Hilariously, a novel which I published in 2018 before your the Natalie Beach drama happened, is about a toxic friendship between someone who is a bit more of an influencer and someone who is ghostwriting her. So I actually found out about you because people sent me the article and said, Tara, do you know this person? Did you steal her life for a book? I did not. I promise. It was a complete coincidence. However, one of the things that interests me most about friendship is precisely the way that it's artificial self-creation potentially becomes harder or potentially becomes easier. That the degree to which we are making ourselves is always making ourselves in someone else's eyes for someone else. And the weirdness about friendship is that you have a kind of built-in audience. You are someone to whom you are close. And at the same time, like the ideal, I guess, of a good friend is that kind of the ideal good friend call, like what calls one on one's shit in a way that like you can sort of like you can, your friend knows you in your messy times or knows you in your vulnerable times, and that means that like the person your friend sees is ideally someone that you don't always choose or cultivate. And I'm curious how, in thinking about this one really formative friendship that you've had, and as well as other friendships, do you see like how does friendship play into the creation of a self for you?
I'm so glad we went to your questions. They are just as good as those 2 paragraphs of text led me to believe. I was right not to get into it then, because it would have taken so long to dive into. That's such a great question. And honestly, the way I think about it is sort of like, I think it's really similar to the internet. Like, I think female friendships, hear me out. I'm not just saying these are like 2 things that I happen to know about, but I think that they're 2 media that can be, or media, they're 2 mirrors that can be really harmful in the way that you use them, and that they can be really positive in the way that you use them. Like, yes, you can use the internet to have all sorts of body dysmorphia and just feel terrible about yourself, and just there are toxic elements to it. But I also think that it's really great that young people who have queer, trans identities are, or even bisexual like me, like that I would have killed to like grow up with all this portal of access to all these people like me, and to be able to form my sense of self through access to them. But it can also be toxic. And I think female friendship is the same way. I think it can be it all just depends on the quality of the friend, or the way that you utilize the friendship, the way that you utilize the internet. Like if you use it in a toxic way, you'll get toxic results. And with female friendship, like if you use it in a toxic way, like, yeah, it'll cut you down, or it will make you into someone you don't want to be. But I also think that it can be something so beautiful and positive. Like I think the way that not Natalie, but I'm thinking of another friend who, when I really told her about my secrets and my desires and who I wanted to be, the way that she believed in me and saw that, and this person whose advice I really trusted, and who I just thought she was smart and wonderful, and to see someone I trusted so much also believe in this version of me and believe in my dreams. I mean, it really propped them up. And so I just think that it can be toxic and it can be beautiful. And it just really depends on how you use it. But I just think the range of it is like not one thing or the other. It's truly just sort of like a mirror that depends what you're bringing to it and what you're taking out of it. And it's just so dependent on an idiosyncratic level.
That's, that's fantastic.
Beautiful. It was like a symphony. I never heard such a good summary of this. It took Elena Ferranta 4 books to write this. It's perfect.
Okay, I'm like, I need the recording of this Zoom chat so I can play this moment.
We'll send you audio, video, different cuts.
You got it all.
This is gonna be my new sleep state. It's just gonna be like Elena Ferrante took 4 books and just like crickets in the background and just sort of like seashore noises, and that's the only way I'm gonna be able to fall asleep. Starting from
your personal headspace motivation.
To hear that. But do we have chat questions?
We do. We have a lot. Do you want to pick which ones you answer, Caroline, or do you want us to throw them at you? We've got quite a few.
I wouldn't know how to pick them. I don't even know where the chat questions are.
All right, I'm gonna read out a couple, and we'll get through this. There's a bunch of great ones. So the first is from Kristen.
Read your favorites.
Oh man, I don't want to choose, but there's 2 that I think.
Okay, we'll just go through all of them. We'll do rapid fire. Yeah. We'll do rapid fire through all of them.
All right. Kristen wants to know, her question is about the interaction between desire and morality. Is it morally good to live the life you desire? Is that all the reason you need? Do we have to care about what we should want? That's Kristen.
Wow, that's really so above my pay grade, and I'm like, I hope the other questions are easier than this one. That one is really tough. I think that one also is a really nuanced answer, in the sense that's like, if you zoom out that far and you're like, should a human being just do what they want? It's like, yeah, as long as you're not murdering someone, like, yeah, free will is great as long as you're not hurting someone else. And I think when you're zoomed out that far, that sort of same logic persists. Like, yes, I do think it's moral to a degree, as long as you're not hurting someone else in a way that is like fundamentally amoral. And who decides what is amoral or not moral? Well, that's every person's decision. But I think the collective temperature on that is like, put sociopaths at the outer, they're the outliers. I think most people know in like a general sense what's right and wrong. And as long as you're not doing that, yeah, I don't think as long as you're not doing that, it's not immoral to chase your desires. Like, to be around castles is not going to break the law. And I think as long as your desires fall within modern legality, I think you're okay.
So something I want to like throw into the chat as a this is more of a comment than a question. But like, something I think is so interesting about your book is precisely the way in which you play around with eroticism more broadly, but like storytelling as an erotic act. And I think what's interesting is that like our desires often are in fact like erotic desires stoked by people out and phenomena outside of us. You know, we're drawn to beauty, we're drawn to whether it's castles or Venetian canals or beautiful people. Like what we want is not at least in my own experience, sometimes there is like this burning core of who we are that is some great desire that we have, and then there's other desires that are just like shaped for us. And I think one of like the interesting powers that you have, that any of us, all of us who are writers here, and I don't know if there's other of you who's in the chat who are writers as well, is the sense that you are like, there's a kind of seduction in telling a story and in shaping what somebody wants. You write about like Carmilla and vampirism, and there's like a long 19th century tradition of like talking about writers like vampires. Like Kierkegaard has a whole thing where he's like, the ironist is like a vampire who sucks the blood of his lover when he, it's weird, but like
I would have tried to reference Kierkegaard had I known.
But I think you absolutely do have this, like, you explore this sort of tension. And I think whether you're sort of consciously like having a manifesto about this or not, like an interplay question that you bring up is like, if stories shape our desire and we live in accordance with our own desires, we're also like, storytellers are really fucking dangerous. You know, who tells the story is also who gets sort of, who's in control of all the desire things. So I don't want to monopolize with my own comments. So I want to bring us back to a question.
I want to add to that before you choose the next question. So I actually think the biggest question of morality that came up for me when writing this book was writing the scene when I talked about being aroused by Natalie's sexual assault. And I thought to myself, if I write this, it will hurt her. If I don't write this, it will hurt. I know Gen Alpha and Gen Z is set, but like millennial women growing up for bisexuality, we had like Tila Tequila's MTV show and like no one else. Like there was really, and even that was like really, it was not only fetishizing, but really like mocking bisexuality in a way that's like, is it even real? She wants the man. Like, does she even want the women? The women are just for the man. Like was sort of, I felt even at a young age was the undercurrent of that MTV reality show. And when I was writing about being turned on by her sexual assault, I really thought I would either let down her, I would let down my millennial bi readership. And the way that I morally felt okay with that is that there were details. If Natalie had never written about it so publicly and tried to tie it into her essay about me, I might have left it out altogether because I just thought it would have been too amoral to include. But she put it in the cut, and there are actually lots of things that she didn't put in that essay in the cut that she left out. And when I wrote about it, pursuing my desires as a memoirist to make the truest story of my life that I could, the way that I felt like I was standing by my morals is that I withheld what she withheld and just sort of stuck to those guidelines of what she wanted to make public and kept that the story. And then, but also told my story. And so I just think that there is a way to fulfill, I think if I had done more than that, even though it would have made a better chapter, like it could have made a better piece of writing to talk about those other things. I think at the end of the day, fulfilling your own desires, you feel a tremor within yourself, unless you're a literal sociopath, in which case, like, get out of this Zoom and go seek therapy. We can't help you. But I just feel like you feel a tremor within yourself of like what is right and wrong, and that you need to listen to that for every person of when you're crossing that like fundamental social boundary. And like, okay, next question.
I would definitely want to circle back to some of the things we talked about then, but I want to go for an audience. This is from Simone. Question for Caroline and the other hosts as well. We grew up in the age of curating our online identities through text and images. LiveJournal, MySpace, Twitter, Instagram. But kids and teens now are growing up curating their public images through video. What are your feelings on the way video is used in social media now and its role in shaping people's public image?
What do you guys feel? No, I don't want my answer to influence.
I'll jump in. I think this is so cliche, but like filters are like in one sense liberating, and then in another sense, I think obviously give people body dysmorphia, right? Like we all know this. I think it's liberating because like a lot of people are fearful to go on video because they feel ugly, and you actually can feel really beautiful with a filter. So you can connect with people in sort of a different way, and that's something that I don't think is discussed a lot. And also on a positive, I feel like there's less. I think people are definitely more theatrical and they're acting more. However, you don't hide as much on video, and so it's more emotional. Whereas with text, like text is like infinitely interpretable. You can be whoever you want to be, and there's no limits. Like there's even like photos are almost limitless. But video, even though you can lie a lot, there's so many restraints that I think it's healthier. In a way, it's healthier than what we had.
I think it's healthier too. You know, what I always come back to is my mom's generation. My mom's like my best friend. You think about like the only remnants of her childhood that I have from the 50s are black and white, like posed photos with her in a little smock dress with like a Peter Pan collar. And whenever I try to think about how video is harmful, as much as I try to extrapolate that with my imagination, I just come back to again and again how much I would fucking kill to have videos, like even if they were stupid TikTok dances of my mom when she was little. And I can't fathom how having that will be worse, because don't you feel like our kids will look at our film photos from the 90s and 80s and be like, I wish we had more. Like, you only took these on birthdays. You don't have anything from the time in between. Like, I just think that it will be nice to have it documented, even if it's cringe now or cringe then. I think for people who like love the people in the videos, it will be so heartwarming. What do you think, Tara?
So I'm torn on picture taking. So I have a very sort of complicated relationship with social media for different reasons that I'll get to in a second. But I think that like the best for me is like what is worth paying attention to, and either writing, taking a picture is a sort of decision to like put time, resources, and energy and saying like this is something worth looking at. And I think that like the fact that it is so low cost to do that, you could just take a picture of your phone, does like mean that the kind of like there's an element of commitment, the same way there's commitment to like writing a letter to like your lover on longhand, where like the thing that you're doing is like taking a picture because you want a memory, but you're also like there's a ritual to like we are attending to this thing that we love by saying that it is worth asking for other people's attention later. I'm very like believer that like attention is a form of love, as they say in Lady Bird and various others. But I think that so I think in that regard, I think that I have reservations about like when there's like no cost to paying attention, is it really a kind of attention? I think so I came of age in LiveJournal internet. I was extremely on LiveJournal. I wanted a poetic life and life as art, and to meet friends who wanted to like run off to Venice and live like 19th century bohemians. We had that fantasy, and I did actually like make real life friends through LiveJournal more than any other medium except maybe Twitter. And I very much like performed life as art in my LiveJournal, which is now gone because. But there was an anonymity to it.
I deleted it and expected
it. Exactly. You can't find it now. But there was a sort of like this is me. I'm a lonely teenager who just like wants this vision of a poetic life. My mom is on this call. I'm sure she's laughing, remembering how annoying I was about this as a teenager. But there was in that anonymity, I think, a way of being honest precisely because it was a part of myself I couldn't share socially as like an awkward ass teenager. But I think that the big shift that I think that took place is like when you're anonymous, like crying out into the wilderness, internet love self got like, once you started using Facebook, once it stopped being anonymous in a certain way, rather than, so I think it's not about being visual or photo based, but about like my social capital in my social life and my online social media presence are one and the same. And I think that I realized like a little too late around the time that Social Creature, my first novel, came out, that like this thing that was for me was suddenly being tied into my career in ways that I found really awful and alienating. And like I would post, pictures of myself in vintage clothes and historical costumes because I loved it. And then at some point around the social media marketing, like someone like sent this to review, like it got sent to reviewers somehow. Janet Maslin wrote in the New York Times that I had an annoying personality, which is really just like not what you want to ever read. It was great. She was like, her book was really good, but she was really annoying, and maybe it would have sold better if she wasn't annoying. I was like, that is the most, like, I don't know how to receive this. I still think about, I don't know why she thought I was annoying. I've never met her in real life. I don't know what I did. But I think that like the idea that my career and how people see me, either as a novelist or as a like culture critic, and my ability to kind of tell a story about my own life for my own sanity, those need to be separate. And like I finally have a like a professional Instagram that I almost never post on, but like I do not have any public social media that is photo based. And I'm very strict about it because I got burned really badly. And sorry. Which is all to say, and it's fine. It was ages ago, but I do think like, and it was a fraction of like what you've experienced.
All one sees are your glowing reviews in The Guardian and the New York Times.
Well, it's very kind. But they didn't say I was annoying in that one. So, I know. But I do think there is, I miss the old internet. I miss the internet where you could just be a weirdo and you're like where the desire to like have community or find someone like you was what was motivating the kind of shouts into the darkness, rather than the desire to like have certain kinds of followers or social capital or literal attention economy, money capital. And I think that like I have reservations about the attention economy overall. And I guess so I'm curious then, as someone who's like been through this, and also who, and this leads me into a question that I do want to make sure to ask you, which is like, there was a universe where there is another book that you could have written, making yourself a brand. I mean, and we were like the book that did not get written, where your personality and your Instagram followers and your public brand were like going to make money for another publisher and a bunch of publicists who have their own interests in like you as a brand for them. Whereas Scammer, as you've done, is self-published. It is completely you, and whatever branding is or is not happening, it is not corporate. So I guess I'm curious, like the alternate version of the book, the other book, the book that didn't get written, how is that different? Like you play with that even from the first sentence when you kind of play with the expectations. How does that book look different from this book?
Okay, that is a wonderful question. And for what it's worth, And We Were Like is not the book that didn't get written. There's just a version of And We Were Like that will never be written, which is the version of And We Were Like called Schoolgirl. And I actually I took $25,000 US less to go with a publisher that would let me keep the title of And We Were Like instead of Schoolgirl, which is like a porn category for like, it's like, even though I lied to get into Cambridge, I'm literally at Cambridge and I felt so demeaned calling my memoir a porn category. There's that version of And We Were Like, which will never be written, but I will write And We Were Like someday. In fact, I have a lot of day books that I want to put out in order to pull what I call a Donna Tartt and just get out of the world. And like, I as much as people think that I'm the heiress to the Calloway Golf Club fortune or whatever they think, like there's no family. Honest, absolutely losing it. There's no family money. Like I can't just work on my book for 6 years. If I want to do that, I need to spend 2 to 3 years in Florida churning out books as the plan is. And then I can retire from the world and make And We Were Like. But the other, and so for that book, it's still coming. And the book that I didn't want to write, I mean, I just needed, it's never going to happen. I needed money. I think about it often, what my life would be like in a parallel universe where I published that book. I think Carl, as I call him in the book, and I would be married. And sometimes I feel like that life is just hovering like sort of one, I don't know, one glimmer away from right now. But I definitely don't want that life. Like I think that I think that it would have been very difficult to ever make any other books after I published that were ever true, because I would have to predicate every book unless I did. I think it would be even harder to do what I did pre-book, to do post-book and like overhaul my whole brand after the book was out and it did well. Like, I'm glad that I went through that hardship before the book existed. But the other thing I want to say to you is that you remind me so much of something that I studied at Cambridge after lying my way in. I know I wasn't supposed to be there, but I passed all of the exams. So that's on Cambridge. But when I was at Cambridge, we do a couple of theses, like where you really have to study. And I'm sure that I could have studied more, but something that one of the 2 topics that I chose to study was the way that critics responded to the invention of photography in the late 1800s. And what they said was, this is technology, this is science, this is actually bastardizing the use of painting. To be a painter, you have to train, but to take a photo, you just buy a camera. Anyone can buy a camera. And now every major museum in the world has a photography collection. And I'm truly not saying that I think someday every major museum in the same way will have like a social media collection. Like I can't fathom what that would look like. And I make no claims to know what it would be. But I just think that this idea that the good times of real art have passed and that this new technology is bastardizing art is just so, it's so common and it's so been done before. And I just don't flinch at it, because the people said the same thing about cameras, you know?
Yeah.
And now people say the same thing about social media. And I don't know what the future will look like, but I do know what the past looked like. And it looked identical. And so I don't worry about it. But really want to take some questions from the chat.
All right, let's get another question from the chat. All right.
I threw my own.
I'm scrolling up. Yeah.
Nice. Sorry, not calling you Kat. My friend who
You can call me Kat.
Sorry, my friend who spells her name this way. It's actually so unfortunate for me that we're having a Zoom with 3 people with whom I have close friendships who actually say their name a different way. My friend is Kat, and there's Tara, and then there's Anna. So Anna, Tara, Catherine, got it. But Catherine, what was your question?
You're so good at Instagram, right? And like, I mean, just intuitively, right? And you kind of like were the blueprint. Were you ever a online celebrity, maybe like under a pseudonym, or like how do you understand the internet so well? Did it just come divinely or something?
Yeah, I burned some sage leaves at an altar for the @ symbol, and then the ways came to me. But no, all jokes aside, I honestly think that it's just something that I know this sounds terrible, but I just felt compelled to do it. And I just felt like I just felt like it was the right thing to do, even though and a good example that I do today that I think is the right thing to do that other people think is crazy. Like back when I was at Cambridge, I really wanted Instagram followers, and people just sort of thought it was so gauche and so like tacky and so useless of me to accrue followers on social media. And then it ended up being this like social currency that you can cash in for cooler friends or free clothing or like a trip to the Maldives or whatever. Like something that I'm doing today that I just feel compelled to in the same way is that I really think that when I started trying to get Instagram followers, the word influencer didn't exist yet. It just like hadn't been invented like back in 2013. And we saw so quickly the whole scaffolding and like intellectual framework of understanding that job change within a decade. But something that I really want to do that there's no word for that I just feel pulled towards is I want to be a memoirist who also integrates performance art into the memoir itself. And there's no word for this. And I don't think people really get it, but I feel pulled towards it. And the only thing I can compare it to is wanting to get Instagram followers in like the early 2010s. But I want to take some questions from the chat. And also, right. Simone, I love your gamer headset. Yeah, it looks really good.
Thank you so much.
We've got a question from Penn. So Penn wants to know, how have you found your way back to yourself after such high exposure to other people trying to define who you are and who you're not?
It was really hard, to be honest. Like, I'm sad that my therapist takes August off because he was a critical part of it. Like, I truly was in therapy like during the peak of Natalie's article and my father's suicide, therapy 3 times a week, antidepressants on a higher dosage than I'm on now. This is when I started taking anti-anxiety meds. Like, I really went heavy on the mental health stuff. And I just really talked through how fundamentally dislocating it was for the whole world to believe in a version of myself that I had to find the courage within myself to not believe in, and to try to make something compelling enough that I could convince the rest of the world to embrace. And that was really daunting. And honestly, the truest answer is that it was just so hard, and it was just heavy on the mental health to give that foundation. And then on top of that, it was terrible. So, okay, next question. It was just really bad. Yeah, what are the next questions? I want to hear from the chat. What are the next questions?
All right. David has a question. David, completely different vein, David is dropping his daughter off at her first year of college in a week, potential English/classics major. Any advice I should give her based on your experience?
Yes, absolutely. Did I hear /classics major? Mm-hmm. Don't get involved with a charismatic classics professor who wants you to murder a peasant in the woods while chanting to the god Dionysus. It's classics history. David, yeah, don't do that. That was just a secret history reference. The other thing that I would genuinely say to her, and I love that I can see you. I love that the person who asked the question, I can see you now, and I really appreciate that, is that I would say to her, the people who you meet the first month don't matter. The people who you meet the first 3 months don't matter. Like, don't feel like your life depends on their friendship or their romantic interest. Truly, where you'll find yourself at college won't happen until after Christmas. So just treat the first fall there like a Disney a Disney park college vacation. Nothing matters. It's all fake. Don't worry about it. And maybe you will find a lasting friend, not to say that you can't have one, but I just find that I would have been so much happier my first fall if I had just thought that that more was waiting for me in the winter and the years after that, because sometimes you cluster together out of fear when you first get there, because everyone's afraid. It's not your fault. Everyone's afraid, and you all cluster together, and maybe you have a hookup and it feels so life or death that first fall. And I would just try to prepare her and say, it does feel life or death that first fall. Don't worry about it. It's not life or death at all. It actually doesn't matter even a little bit. Some of these people you're talking to, you'll never see again for the next 3 to 4 years. So just calm down and know that your real life at college will actually begin after Christmas. I'll see you at Christmas break, sweetie. Have fun. It's Disneyland. It's not that serious, would be my advice. Yeah.
Fantastic. We have a couple more questions in the chat, and then I want to ask you about England.
Okay.
But before we do that, Christina, I was pivoting on the question earlier about LiveJournal and different forms of being online in different generations, says, when we curate our online identities, how much of them do you think are us? And how much of them are just the image we aspire to be, but sometimes become?
Yes, I am so glad you asked this question. I feel like it really plays back to the first question that you asked, like where do our desires end and like our real selves begin? And my viewpoint on this question is not what I think most people agree with. I think that I opened my book with this Kurt Vonnegut quote that says, we are only what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be. And I just really believe in that. I just really think that like your desires and what you want to be I think they're as much a part of your spirit and your true sense of self as any action that you've taken. And I just think not everyone would agree with that, but that is what I personally feel. I think that they extend out of you like a spirit. And that's just how I personally see the world. And I don't need everyone to agree with that, but that is my answer. I think who you want to be it hovers around your true sense of self like a ghost from the future, and it's part of you, and it is as real as anything that you do today.
Right. So we have another question from Penn, and I'm excited because this is going into, I wanted to ask about England, but Penn asks, in what ways was Cambridge what you dreamed of? And in what ways was it not?
I love how you announce these.
I'm enjoying my recording, my sexy recording voice. Yeah.
And what ways was it not? I really, really like, honestly, Scammer needs an audiobook narrator. So like, trust me, I won't forget. But
oh, I would. I do that.
Honestly, the Scammer audiobook would be so lucky as to have you as its narrator. In terms of Cambridge and what was like I imagined and what was not, what was like I imagined was the aesthetic beauty of it. There were just moments when you would walk down a misty, cobblestoned, spired alleyway at dawn with the sky pinking and just maybe some geese clamoring in the background, and your heart would break in a million ways. And that's exactly what I wanted Cambridge to be. In terms of what I didn't think Cambridge would be, I thought Cambridge would make me happy. Plot twist, I got addicted to Adderall. It did not make me happy. So that is how it lived up and fell short of my expectations. And let me do a couple of rapid fire so that we can get through these.
All right. One
One more from Simone. We've talked a bit about internet nostalgia. What are your thoughts about our online futures? Is there anything happening online now that makes you feel excited or makes you feel the way Instagram did back in college? And keep those questions coming, everybody.
You're such a newscaster. You're like, and back to you, Caroline. Yeah, I'm really excited about TikTok. I feel like had I been at Cambridge now, I would be all over with the camera quality. Like, you have to remember, I was working with like a much worse like device. Like, the fact that you can get such good video, like I would have been doing so much more video had the iPhone 4 been capable of it, you know? Okay, next.
Havana wants to know.
Catherine D, why are you throwing these in the comments? You
there we
talk.
Catherine. Catherine, you asked something.
Okay, so I posted this on Twitter, so just in case we didn't get enough questions, and one of my followers asked, how would your story be different if you were a man? And I thought that was really crazy and compelling.
Oh, I love that. And yes, I totally know how it would be different. One, I would never have to sort of hinge my story around the idea of a romance at Cambridge. I think if I were just a young up and coming male writer at Cambridge, I don't think anyone would ever question if I went to Cambridge to find a wife, the way that people fundamentally question, are you at Cambridge to find a husband? And I don't think that I would feel compelled at all the way that I do feel compelled as a woman, just having been socialized with rom-coms and many billions and trillions of tiny interactions throughout my life as a child that told me that like marrying rich or finding a man would be some sort of solution. I just think that would be absent from my psyche. I don't think I would think about that at all. I think no one else would think about that at all. And I think the idea of me being at Cambridge, I would not have to play into some sort of Julia Roberts trying to find Hugh Grant sort of stereotype. I think being a young man at Oxbridge, I could just be Evelyn Waugh, but American. I could just be an up and coming young writer who's very exciting on Instagram. I don't think it would have to be all these feminine things that it's on me that I utilize them, like that I utilized romance and ball gowns, but it's also a problem of like, don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, it's not my fault that like that is what the patriarchy has designed every little person in the algorithm to respond to ball gowns and romance is what performed best on Instagram. And I was an ambitious young person at Cambridge in a female body. So that's what I had to do to get those likes. So I just think it would be totally different. And I love being a woman, and I feel very correctly gendered, but I often wistfully think of how nice it would be to just be a man living the same thing. So to your follower on Twitter, I feel the same way. And I think about it often, and that's how I think it would be different.
All right, rapid fire next question. First one's from Havana. Would you say lying is justifiable if it's for art and positive public impact? Or do you think those two concepts are not necessarily connected for you?
Okay, that's a great question. Here's how I feel about lying. And trust me, I know, because I did it on a big scale for years. Like at a certain point, lying by omission is truly just lying. Like when you're like, oh, I'm at Cambridge and my life is great, but you're like just like railing lines of Adderall with your student ID card, just chopping them up. At a certain point, it's like you're not telling the full truth. You're just lying. How I feel about lying now is that I think anything that doesn't affect the plot in a major way, like if you say that if you can't remember what color coat you were wearing and you make up a sheepskin coat, or if you say that this one conversation happened and then you went straight to the grocery store and had this other conversation just because it's more convenient, but it doesn't fundamentally change either conversation. I think that's okay. When you start to change dates or change details so that it has where it reflects more on the characters or like says something larger about your story, I think that's where you have to draw the line with lying. Like if you're doing, if it doesn't reflect on the plot or the characters, go for it. Mix your stories, try to entertain the reader, do what's best for them. As soon as you start to make major plot edits, I think that's when lying goes too far and you shouldn't do it.
Next question. Oh, where is Matisse right now? There we go.
Oh, he's lying in this turquoise thing in this pile of ribbons. Do you see? It's right there. That's Matisse.
Next question. We're gonna keep rapid fire.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry, I am now scrolling through a never-ending feed. How do you think about fear and courage with respect to being yourself and doing what you want? Do you think that you are less paralyzed than that fear than others?
Yes, but I think the only reason that I'm less paralyzed by it is because right after I went through my era where I was all about presenting myself perfect on Instagram as this perfect Cambridge princess, I took 18 months off without Instagram, got Adderall sober, but then after that, I spent about 18 months just like straight up shit posting through the pandemic. Like I would post like 15 times a day, like on my grid, like on stories. Like it was bananas. It was actually so deeply unhinged, but it felt so good because I just think I really needed to like overcorrect from like how much pressure had been that I'd put on myself, that other people had put on me. I just needed to overcorrect. And I don't think I care anymore, but only because I went through a strange sort of like Instagram ice bath of like posting the most unhinged shit for like truly 9 months. And I think after that, I emerged from it and I truly did not care, but I don't recommend it for everyone. It's just what I did.
Quick question from me. Would you you tweet, but you don't tweet that much. Would you ever consider becoming a poster, as they say on Twitter, or is that medium not one that interests you as much?
Well, I do think that to use the Twitter, never say the X lingo. I do think that I have a poster's heart, but it's an Instagram poster's heart, and I'll never be a true Twitter girly. Like I think I always see Twitter as like the last place I would post. It goes Instagram, then TikTok, then Twitter, like I just think there's something even about my writing that's so visual that I really love. Also, your eyes are so pretty. I feel like we especially get to see them when you read the comments. They're so nice.
Oh, it's very kind. Yes. So more questions.
Amazing. Okay, it's 7:14.
Yes.
Let's end this at 7:30. Let's be very intentional about this and just do 15 more minutes. And you won't even believe this, but I finished my mega pint of rosé. So we'll do this while I fix myself a glass of red wine.
Question from a friend of Simone's.
Okay.
Would you change anything from your life or how you got to where you are?
Instinctively, yes. But I think there's this like paradox of time travel that I wrote about in Scammer that I actually don't remember the name of or what it's called. But it's this time travel paradox that if you go back and you shoot your grandfather, nothing else can happen. You change one thing, everything else is wrong. And it basically says that if you actually, it doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is that, yes, I would change lots of things if I could have everything else the same. Like if I could just go back with a surgical scalpel and change certain things, I would. But I don't think that according to this principle, that is impossible. You either have to, if you change one thing, you change everything. And so there's so many things that I like about where I am that I would have to say, no, I wouldn't. I would change some things, but in order to change them, I'd have to give up the things that I really like. So I wouldn't change them.
I think Anna, you've got a question.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I respond to anything that has.
Oh, it.
Sorry?
The raised hand function in the.
I'm being so proud.
Learning so much about Zoom.
I love it. Yeah, I'm really curious. Like you said two things that really, I mean, you said so many things, Caroline, that really deeply resonate with me, and I'm just so full of thoughts and gratitude that you're sharing this. But there are two questions where I'm wondering, for very selfish reasons, how they might connect. You were talking about how much courage it took for you to distance yourself from somebody else's view of you, shared very publicly, very negatively, and very falsely. And then you're quoting this fantastic Kurt Vonnegut line about how we are what we pretend to be, and so we have to be very careful what we pretend to be. And I'm wondering if that is true, so if you internalize this fact that the self is largely a creation and we are, our own creations, how do we respond well to any attack on our reputation, on or our sense of self? How do we reclaim the story and the work of art? Because this is a little bit saying, like, I'm my own author, you cannot be my author. What was the process like for you?
It's so hard. And I think the number one thing that I would say is just like, it's the hardest, and it's okay if it feels like the hardest thing in the world, because it felt like that for me. But what really, really helped me, honestly, is I love the way that the people who I really admired believed in me, and believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And I would say at the end of the day, you do have to climb out of that hole yourself. Like, they can't write the book for you. They can't make the things that you want to make. It has to be you that actually like goes to the computer and types the things. Like, no one else can do that for you. But I think the number one thing that really helped me was just leaning on people whose opinions I admired, and just leaning on their opinion of me, even though I was like, you're crazy. I'm never going to write a good book. Like, it just really helped to, it just really, the person who comes to mind is the woman who did this Vanity Fair profile of me when she was profiling me for Vanity Fair. Like, she really, even as the article was going to print and the book wasn't done, and she had every reason not to believe in me, but she was just my friend and she still thought that I'd get it done. Like, wherever you find these people whose professional, personal, emotional, intellectual opinions you admire, I would just say, throw an anchor into them and just like hold on, because there'll be time. Like, there were times when I was just like, okay, my life is over. Like, I'm never going to fix this. Like, it makes like it's a big problem, and it makes sense that one would feel so hopeless. So don't discount those feelings. When you feel overwhelmed by those feelings, I would say hold on to the opinions of your friends who believe in you when you're not believing in yourself. And then step 3, unfortunately, it will have to be you. No one else can do it. You will have to go to the computer screen and do whatever you need to do to achieve your goals. No one else is going to do it. But yeah, one, just really accept how terrible it is because it's the worst. Two, just let your friends believe in you when you don't believe in yourself, which at least for me was, I didn't believe in myself for a long time. And then three, drag yourself to the computer. It only you can do the thing is how I got through it. But it's so hard and it's just really tough. And I just don't think people talk about it. I really hesitate to use the word trauma for like a reputational thing. Like when people doubt your reputation, I truly think it's a type of trauma that we don't yet have language to fully pin down and discuss. Like I really think it's a type of trauma, and I feel crazy saying it, but I believe it. I really think it's a type of trauma that we just don't have the maybe the DSM-8 will have like terminology for this that we don't have now.
Thank you so
I
much.
would love if there's like more therapists. I would love if there's like more therapists who understood people with big platforms online. There just like aren't enough of them. They're super rare.
Mine doesn't. He has no idea. But
I discovered something very weird. Freudian analysts are more likely to.
What? Why?
Really weird. I don't know. I just on my own personal journey for looking for a therapist, the only one I was able to find was from like the Freud Institute of Chicago. I have one. I think this will be our last question. Let's see, in case anyone else. Well, no, I'll just ask. I'm not even gonna look at the chat.
More questions. But I do a few more. Let's do one more from you. Let's do 5 rapid fire from the chat after that. And then let's do one from Tara, who really had the best questions ever. Maybe 2 from Tara, because like her questions were so fucking good. Like I don't have a hard out at 7:30. I truly was just saying that because honestly, in terms of what I personally would enjoy from a Zoom call, I would not want that Zoom call to go over 90 minutes as a participant. I say that truly, like not, just what I would want. So I would just want it to be ending before 8 is what I would want as a Zoom caller in. Do you know what I mean?
I think
like,
that's fair.
No.
Do you have a person who is like your Caroline Calloway, who you're just like fascinated by and who, whose story you can't get enough of?
No, I don't. And I really think that I think that there are lots of women who I'm interested in and who I admire so much. I mean, Kat Marnell and Julia Fox, just thinking about women who are supportive and text me and inspire me and are just iconic, totally fucking iconic. Like, yes, I love them so much. But in terms of like what I want the idea of Caroline Calloway to occupy in American letters, there is nothing like it. I don't think there should be anything like it. I think the flowers and the turquoise and the Cambridge and the scamming and the chaos and the New York and the European palaces, I definitely want it to be new and not done before. So yeah, there is no one that I really look to for that brand, although people inspire me every day. But in terms of like what I want Caroline to be, no, there are no precedents. It's really something that I want to like, that's never been before.
Quick one from the group chat. What's next after the book?
Oh, Instagram trilogy. I'm making the Cambridge captions and I am Caroline Calloway. I'm going to publish 3 books this year. I know. Anna's such a good hype woman, just like her, like in the chat, just being like yes.
I'm here to react.
Incredible.
Will there be a Caroline movie? And if so, who will play you? Who do you want to play you? We can get the word to them, so we're asking for it.
So we're actually talking to people right now for the movie. There was a whole movie that was going to happen that fell apart for scandalous reasons that you can read about in the book. But right now we're talking to directors And I have a couple actresses in mind that I actually don't want to say because I don't want to blow their spot up. But the Caroline Calloway movie / TV series, trust me, it's in the works.
Is there a book or a writer you love that not enough people have heard of?
Yes. I am very passionate about two of these people. And I wish, thank you so much for asking me. We should have titled this whole panel about these women. It's Enhead Juana and Lady Murasaki. Did you know that the first author ever in the history of the world was, sorry, I'm going to turn up my brightness so that you can maybe see me better. But the first author ever to be named on a stone tablet back in fucking Mesopotamia. Her name was Enhead Juana. She was like the Pope of the Sumerian Akkadian religion. She was the daughter of Sargon I, and instead of marrying her off politically, he just installed her as Pope of the new religion. She wrote these hymns, many of which are just religious hymns, but some of them are autobiographical. She talks about an usurper for Sargon I. He throws her out. He gives her a dagger. He tells her to kill herself. She doesn't kill herself. She's in the desert. It's amazing. I think it's called Hymn to Inanna. No one knows about this, and I'm very passionate about the fact the first author in the world whose name we know was a woman who wrote memoir. Why are we not all talking about this? I'm very passionate about this. And the other one that I don't think people are talking about is Lady Murasaki. You know, ever heard of a little thing called the novel? Yeah, Lady Murasaki invented it with the Tale of Genji. She wrote the Tale of Genji in, I don't know what era of Japan. I'm going to say Edo, but I don't think that's right. She wrote the Tale of Genji. And then she wrote her memoirs, and they're even more complete than Enhead Juana's. And Enhead Juana of Sumeria and Lady Murasaki of Japan it's feudal Japan, so it's not Edo. But it's anyways, she wrote her memoirs, and they are so beautiful. And I swear she was a closeted queer. Like, it's giving Japanese Emily Dickinson. Like, she is just talking about like all these women and their beautiful sleeves and how they touch their sleeves and how they're alone in gardens. Like, the bisexual in me was like, I think you want to fuck these women, or at least I want to fuck these women. It was very sensual and poetic and gorgeous. So Lady Murasaki and Enhead Juana. Sorry, that wasn't rapid fire. I'm just very passionate about these topics. Okay. Next one I'll do really fast.
Okay, this one is the last of the audience questions. It is a fast question. Simone wants to know how you knew they were gamer headphones. Does that mean you are a gamer? And if so, what are you playing? LMFAO.
Someone named Christina just went like this. It was so cute. She just went, oh, I love it so much. But it was so good. But I know they're gamer headphones because one of my greatest vices, you know what? I won't even say that. One of my greatest loves is watching other people play The Sims on YouTube. So like Kelsey Impeachme, I think Impeachke is how you say her name, and Claire Siobhan and Lil Simsy. They all have gamer headphones, so that's how I know. And I just love The Sims, and I love watching people play. Only The Sims 4 I really don't like. Well, sometimes I like a throwback, but mainly The Sims 4.
All right, fantastic. So I am going to ask you a closing question, which is...
your questions are so good. Wait, let's do one from you, and then we'll pick one more random question from the chat, and then we'll do one more closing question.
Okay. Fabulous. We have actually, so here's the thing. We've run through the audience questions. So I'm going to ask my question now. And if anyone's got one final question, I'll ask it at the very end. So we open with a quote from your book. Let's close with a quote from your book. My goal is to write as though already dead. And I guess I'm curious both if you could talk more about that and what that means. And also more broadly, Like, what is this for? What is art for? You know, simple, easy question like that. But I guess as a memoirist who turns your own life into art, what is art? Why is art? Is this something is just a compulsion you have, or do you have a vision of what art should be?
Wow. Okay. I'm like, please, audience, could you get another question in? Because that one is very difficult. But that is a crazy question. I really feel like I'm at a Cambridge exam where it's like, is genius born or is it acquired? Discuss. And
there are no wrong answers.
And you have 60 minutes and you have to figure it out.
Yes.
But, I really don't know about other people's art or what it's for. I really don't think about it at all, even when I was supposed to on an exam and it was timed. I really just think about the things that I want to make. And I really think that depression is really helpful to me in the sense that I don't expect to be happy in my lifetime. Because you're just so sad all the time when you're depressed. You're just like, everything is so not pleasurable and you don't really expect life to be full of pleasure. And I think that is really helpful to me in one regard of my art, is that I really take like a not super zoomed out, but slightly zoomed out beyond my own life view of what I leave behind, what I produce, the mark I make on American culture, the sort of like iconic silhouette that I leave behind. I think that depression is very helpful for that, because I like don't expect to be, it's not about like having fun while I'm alive. It's like, what will I leave behind? You know, like, I think that's like really, really helpful in a way. And so I really don't think about art as a larger thing. I just think about it for me. Before we leave, I just want to shout out the people with their cameras on because they're so pretty. Simone with her gamer headphones, Taylor looking like Taylor Swift. We have Havana, David, and I feel like I keep scrolling. Yes, Christina, Kristen, and Penn. Christina, how did you even get this background? Seriously, it's amazing.
So during the pandemic or whatever, Fox made a bunch of backgrounds and I downloaded them all and they're in a folder just called Zoom backgrounds and I like rotate them like every few days.
It's amazing. It looks so good. And Kristen, I think that you just look like a Wednesday Addams cooler older sister. And Penn Belint, they're just rocking what can only be described as Avril Lavigne's wet dream of a 90s hairstyle or early 2000s hairstyle, actually. But
it's actually a crown of chilies.
Stop.
Yeah, it's like I have a photo shoot tomorrow and I was practicing the look and then I saw that this was going on, so I didn't have time to like
and you have a British accent that's actually like ridiculous, and you can choose one. You can have the crown of chilies or you can have such a pretty British accent. It's actually a little ridiculous of you to have both and unfair for everyone involved. It looks so pretty. But
a couple more questions from the chat. So Penn wants to know if that's one of your John's crests in the background. What's going on in the background there?
Like
just a fire
in the doorway.
Oh God, you have an
sorry, that's really creepy that I noticed that. Sorry.
Amazing fucking eyesight. There are two crests over there, if you can see them on the two doorways, and it is actually St. Edmunds and Downing College, because when I was at Cambridge, I lived in 3 colleges. I lived at St. Edmunds, Downing, and King's College, and there is a King's College crest. You just can't see it, but my God, please type back to that chatter. Incredible eyesight. Ridiculous eyesight, 10 out of 10. What are the other questions?
Kat wants to know if you've seen this, and she
Did you know that people have acted you out on The Sims? Wait, your sound went out.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you're typing your questions in the
No,
chat.
there's a link. There's a link. There's a link. People have created Caroline Calloway Sims mods. Did you know that? So I left a link so you could click and see that they play you on The Sims.
I didn't know that. I've never been more honored in my entire life. Thank you. And I did not know that. And I'm like, can you text me the link? Because I really want to see this. I really want to see that. That's amazing. I love The Sims. Like, truly love The Sims. Are there any other questions?
I think we're all set. Anyone? Last call. And if not,
and then I want to hear your last question, and then we'll all say goodbye. Because I just personally would love a Zoom chat that lasted less than 2 hours. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that
yeah. Well, all right. Last question, which is, let's see. I'm interested in how you see the relationship between storytelling and sex. You start and your book with sexual images, with playing with language of sexuality. That's an undercurrent through. What's up with that? Talk about sex some.
I love this question. So raunchy, obsessed. I think that I'm just, you know how Sally Rooney's books just feel like there's this undercurrent of sex just running through every single chapter, and it makes them so titillating to read. That was really, I'm just so aware of human nature and how drawn we are to sex. And when I think any book I make, I want it to be, as The Independent said this, demonically gripping page turner is how they describe Scammer. And I this phrase is like, I wish I'd come up with it myself. Like, I want everything I write to be a demonically gripping page turner. And I think part of doing that is just sort of threading sex throughout. And that's why I made it such a common thing, because I just think that it just makes it really electrifying to read. And that's just why I did it.
Well, thank you so much for being here, for your time, for writing Scammer.
I'm so your friend. I literally haven't done a live event in like 4 fucking years. I truly agreed to this because you asked me. Like, I'm here because of you. And like, I want to be your friend. But also, Catherine D, like, not to be left out of this, I also am now your friend, and you literally have my phone number, and you are texting me the Sims link. So like, do not feel like you're not part of this. You text me the Sims link. I'm waiting on it.
All right. Well, I'll say goodbye there, but this has been fantastic. A highlight of my day, week. Fun. And have a great night, everybody. I'm off to go blues dancing. See you all anon.